Don't be stupid. John Mearsheimer, he gave Donald Trump only two options when it comes to Ukraine and Russia war. Take a listen.
What do you think is going to happen if Trump comes in and says we want a ceasefire, and that's one of his initial negotiating positions, and the Russians just say no?
They're not going to get a ceasefire. The Russians would be nuts to agree to a ceasefire. They're on a roll. Why would they agree to a ceasefire, which would give the Ukrainians and the West a time to reconstitute the forces and get ready to fight against the Russians in much better shape than they are now? So there's not going to be a ceasefire. I think there are two ways this can play out. One is that the Trump administration agrees to Putin's demands and you get an agreement, you get a peace agreement. And the two main demands here are, number one, that NATO, that Ukraine never becomes a part of NATO, that Ukraine is a neutral state. That's demand number one. And demand number two is that the West recognizes that the four oblasts that Russia has annexed and Crimea are now Russian territory and will be Russian territory forever. Putin has made it clear that those two conditions have to be accepted to get a peace agreement. I find it hard to believe that Trump would accept those two terms. And if he did, that he could get support for that agreement in Ukraine and in the West, especially in the United States. So I don't think you're going to get a peace agreement. The alternative is that the war will go on, and at some point the Ukrainians will collapse, and you'll end up with a frozen conflict. And this will be a disaster for Trump because it will look like he lost the war. Joe Biden has done a brilliant job of kicking the can down the road so that when Ukraine finally collapses, the Ukrainian army finally collapses, Trump will be blamed, not Biden, who should be blamed.
Okay, so here is what I think things can be very, very scary and dangerous. What John Mearsheimer is saying basically is that Donald Trump will not most likely get a suitable negotiation between Ukraine and Russia before his term will end. Now, we know Donald Trump, who he is. If he doesn't get what he wants from Russia and Ukraine war, I am afraid that he might be looking for some other ways of bringing this war to an end or to destroy either Ukraine or Russia. He will try to destroy Ukraine's economy, military, if he thinks that U.S. will have to spend more and more money, more and more billions of dollars for Ukraine to take oxygen. He will do something to harm Ukraine so that Russia can easily take over Ukraine and establish their authority, their government there. He will not destroy Ukraine if he does see that Russia is not willing or cannot continue war with Ukraine for the foreseeable future. If he sees that weakness from Russia, then I think that he will most likely choose a path of more conflict with Russia, continue on supporting Ukraine, see how far Russia can go, on the premise that Russia will not be able to fight for too long. It all depends, but whatever it is, looks like to me Donald Trump, his coming to office, his view on these things could be a lot more aggressive than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I mean, that old man, he supported Ukraine and he supplied them with all kind of weapon. Now, the Joe Biden administration did not really want to have a direct conflict with Russia. But at the very end, that's what U.S. wanted, looks like, when they supplied the ATACMS to Ukraine. But nevertheless, they did not really want to get involved in a war with Russia militarily, or we have actually not seen Joe Biden talking about taking further steps to stop Russia. But for Donald Trump, that could actually change if what John Mearsheimer is saying is true.
But these are the two choices Trump has. Either he agrees to Putin's terms and you get a real peace agreement, or the war goes on, Ukraine loses, the West loses, and Trump is in real political trouble as a result.
Yeah, I mean, Trump will never accept a defeat. I mean, we should not even be talking about the possibility of United States under Donald Trump will accept Russian terms and condition, tuck their tail, and just leave. I don't think under Donald Trump's watch that will happen. So this is why, as I said, it could be a lot more dangerous and scarier situation under Donald Trump when it comes to Ukraine and Russia's war.
What would happen if the fighting continues from the Western perspective?
It would absolutely be preferable. It would be preferable from Ukraine's point of view. Ukraine has no interest, as you and I have argued on numerous occasions, in seeing this war continue. And I think what they ought to do is accept Putin's terms, in large part because they have no choice. They're losing on the battlefield. And continuing the war is worse than settling it now. The problem is that it's politically difficult, if not impossible, for Trump to do this. I mean, I think Doug is right in what Trump should do. Cut the deal now. But actually doing that's another matter.
Well, it certainly is, but that's why they're paying the big bucks, as they say, that as to be president of the United States. And I was actually on Tucker Carlson's show a couple of days ago, recorded, rather, they hadn't actually aired it yet. But one of the things that he said, it really stuck with me, that Tucker suggested was, when we were again talking about this issue of how things would be perceived, he said, I think Trump should just say, I don't care what anybody says, because I know that his political opponents are not going to like him. So he should just do what makes sense for his people and the people that voted for him. In large part, one of the big reasons was because he was going to bring this to an end. He said those people would be happy, and the other ones are never going to be happy anyway. So I truly hope that Trump takes that course of action.
So what I do is I work online and I travel.
Of course, Trump is going to be going with his own fan base for which they have voted him in the office, and he also showed that's exactly what he will do when we talk about Israel and Gaza issue. He is going with his promise that he made before he was elected, that he's going to stop this war even before he takes office, and that's exactly what he did. Even though the Zionists, for example, Smotrich, the finance minister, Ben Gvir, they quit, they resigned from the government, or actually Smotrich, he said he will actually collapse the government if they do not go back to war in Gaza. But regardless, even though these ministers, they are talking big and threatening the government to collapse, nevertheless, Donald Trump doesn't really care. What he cares, he wants the ceasefire agreement for Israel to agree on. He forced Benjamin Netanyahu, from what we understand now. And same will be applied when it comes to Russia. He's going to be forcing Ukraine to take a position, stop this war, surrender to Russia. And if he doesn't do that, of course, as John Mearsheimer said, that might not be possible. That Ukraine will just forget about everything that they have done. Plus, United States, they have spent and invested billions of dollars in Ukraine. So for Trump to say to Ukraine, hey, just surrender to Russia, is unlikely because of those help aid that they have been providing that senile old man, Joe Biden.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. But my only point is it will not be easy to do.
I think it would be enormously difficult. But to your point about what happens if he doesn't, if he's not willing to do the hard leadership stuff and take the heat that for sure will come from a number of different quarters, not the least of which would be from some European capitals. I think you can probably add a few into there as well. But also, if he doesn't, forget about the heat that he could get externally. What may happen on the ground could be problematic. There was a little remarked upon in the West comment out of basically kind of a quasi-national security advisor for Putin, one of his senior aides. He's on the National Security Council. I think he's roughly equivalent to Jake Sullivan. He came out and said that as far as Russia, how do you see that playing out, and what do you make of his comments?
Well, I've argued for a long time, Danny, and I mean a long time, that the Russians are likely to take those oblasts that are to the west of the 4 oblasts that they have annexed.
You know, I remember, by the way, one of the first times we had you on our channel, you said you thought
Okay,
they would.
I'm not going to play the rest of the video, guys. You can watch it from that channel. Just wanted to throw in some comments about what John Mearsheimer is saying and what Donald Trump could be doing when he comes to office.